everyone. So, for us to understand our fourth week of our module in science, we have to recall first your lesson in the fourth quarter in your grade 8 level. So, I did not know if you have finished this already last school year, but I am pretty sure that some of these are discussed with those sections I have handled. Let us talk about the basic concepts that we need for genetics. So let's start with the hereditary characters. When we see hereditary characters, these are characters that are controlled by our genes. And when we say genes, genes are the factors of heredity. It is being transmitted from one generation to the next generation, usually from the parent to the offspring. So, from your parent, papunta sa'yo. From sa'yo, papunta sa offspring mo. So, that's how it goes. So, these genes are being represented by the letters. Capital, both capital letters, both small letters, or a combination of a capital and a small letter. Remember that the gene, not the character, is passed on from the parent to the offspring. So, hindi namamana yung ugali, ha? Hindi niya namamana yung ugali niyo from your parent. Hindi iyan pinapamana. But, the one that is being inherited are the genes in the DNA of your parents. Is it understood? I hope. Let us talk about alleles. Alleles is one of the two alternative forms of a gene. So, it is a pair of genes. There is what we call the homozygous and the heterozygous. When we say homozygous, these are the same, similar. And when we say heterozygous, they are different. So, ano yung different? So, ang sinasabi natin dito na same and different are the traits or the character na dala-dala ng genes. So, ano yung mga traits or character na yon? So, characters or traits can be dominant or recessive. Okay. So, when we see dominant trait, it is an inherited characteristic that appears in an offspring if it is contributed from a parent through a dominant allele. So, usually, kung ano yung nasa parent mo na napunta sa'yo, that is the dominant allele or the dominant trait. It is denoted as the capital letter. So, for example, a capital letter X. So, X stands for everything, right? Okay. So, dahil nga dominant siya, so ang representation niya is a capital letter. Okay. Next is the recessive. When we say recessive trait, these are characteristics that does not appear on the first filial generation. So, just try to imagine, your parent has a characteristic na wala sa inyong magkakapatid. That is what we mean by the recessive trait. So, since it is recessive, it is denoted as a small letter. Again, pag sinabi natin dominant, nakikita sa parent, nakita agad sa first filial generation. Then when we say recessive, these are the traits or the characters in the first parental generation that does not appear on the next generation. Again, meron tayong tinatawag na dominant and the recessive trait. Again, dominant is capital letter, recessive is small letter. Okay. If the trait, if pareho siyang capital letter, that is homozygous. So, pareho siyang capital letter. So, dahil pareho, we say that it is homozygous. And that is a dominant trait. Hindi yan lahat ng capital letter homozygous dominant, no. a dominant trait can be replaced by any other traits. For example, tall, short. This is just a general term. Homozygous dominant trait. And if it is both small letters, homozygous pa din siya kasi nga pareho silang small letters. Okay, pero recessive na siya. Recessive trait. So, again, recessive is just a general term. So, it can be replaced. It must be replaced by a specific trait. For example, dwarf or short or curly hair, whatever is given in the problem or in the situation. We just have to identify yung dominant at recessiveness. If it is a combination of a capital letter and a small letter, since magkaiba na sila, so we write or we use the prefix hetero. So hetero meaning different. So this is heterozygous. So by following the law of dominance, if an individual has a trait that is heterozygous, it is always the dominant trait that is visible. So that is heterozygous dominant trait, or that is in the situation or in the case. Okay? So like for example, if we're talking about flower color, purple is dominant, and white is recessive. So purple is capital letter P, white is small letter p. So we use only one letter for a trait. So flower color, letter P yan. So isang malaki para sa dominant, isang maliit para sa recessive. So if we're going to write it like this, capital letter P, that is homozygous purple. If we're going to write it both small letter P, that is homozygous white. Kasi parehong small letter. But if we're going to write it as capital letter P and small letter p, that is heterozygous purple. So, I hope you won't get confused with this. Homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive. If it is heterozygous, then you follow what is dominant. Okay? I hope you understand that. So, some characters are acquired which are not passed on to the next generation. When we say acquired, nakukuha mo siya. Pero, hindi mo siya na papakita on your physical. So, it is usually hidden on your generation, but it will appear on the next generation. Hereditary characters are not acquired characters. Then let us talk about Mendel's experiments. Who is Gregor Johann Mendel? So Gregor Mendel is an Austrian monk and botanist. He is considered to be the father of classical genetics. He is born in Heisendorf, Moravia, Austria, and that is now part of Czech Republic. So in 1844, he joined the Augustinian monastery of St. Thomas of Brunn, Austria, at the age of 22. He spent 10 years of his life experimenting on garden peas and another 2 years analyzing his results. So what did he learn from his experiments? Why did Mendel select garden peas for his experiment? Let us answer these questions. So these are garden peas. I know you are already familiar with this. This is the plant that Mendel studied that made him become the father of genetics. So why did he use garden peas in this experiment? Number one, The plant has several characters that exhibit two contrasting traits. As in, when he saw that plant, and when you are going to look at that plant, dalawa lang yung kanyang traits para sa isang character. For example, yung seed color niya, wala nang ibang seed color for a garden pea plant but yellow and green. So, walang halo. And another, meron yung flower color niya, ang meron lang is purple and white. Yun lang ang talagang ma-observe nyo sa plant na yon. So, maganda siyang pag-aralan. Kasi, ma-determine nyo kung ano yung magiging next na traits sa next na generation. Okay, garden pea plants reproduce at a fast rate. It does not need much caring and cultivating. Garden pea flowers are structurally adapted for self-pollination. When we see pollination, diba, that is how plants reproduce. And there are two types. The self-pollination, yung male and female reproductive system will be from the same plant. The other is the cross-pollination. It's the male part of the plant and the female part of another plant. So, magko-cross yung dalawang plants. Anyway, Mendel's experimental design includes 3 important steps. But before we proceed in the 3 important steps, let me just tell you about the generations. So there are 3 types of generations. First is the first parental generation. So, when we see first parental generation, this is the parent. Ito yung inyong, for example, parent. Or usually the initial of the family. Next is the first filial generation. So, when we see first filial generation, this is the offspring of P1. This is P1. This is F1. So, offspring ng P1, yung anak ng P1. Like, for example, your parent is the first parental generation, you are the first filial generation. Kayo yung anak ng parents eh. Okay? So, first filial generation can also be considered as the second parental generation. So, pwede yung P2. Okay? Kasi, on the second note, meron tayong tinatawag na second filial generation. So, syempre, naging parent na si filial, second parental na siya. Generation. This is F2. So, second filial generation is the offspring of F1. So, ito siya. Ito sa parent. I hope you understand that. Okay? So, balik tayo doon sa experiment ni Mendel. So, what are the 3 important steps from Mendel's experiment? Number 1, Mendel studied one character with 2 contrasting traits at a time. So, when we say one character, kung ano yung physical na attribute ng plant na yun. For example, ay seed color. So, seed color, meron siyang dalawang contrasting traits. 2 contrasting traits. That will be yellow and wala nang iba. And other characters also has 2 contrasting traits. The flower color, the flower position, the stem length, the seed color, the seed shape, the pod shape, and the pod color, and the others. So Mendel cross-pollinated the 2 pure breeding plants with contrasting traits for the same character. So pure breeding plants ito. So pure na yellow, pure na green. What he did is he cross-pollinated these 2 different plants and found out ano ba yung makukuha niya kapag
nag-combine yung pure na yellow at yung pure na green seeded plant.
Then, after nun, nung nakuha niya na yung mga first filial generation from that cross, yung mga na-produce na mga plants, yun naman ay nag-self-pollinate. So, Mendel allowed the F1 plants, now P2, to self-pollinate. Then, tinignan niya yung effect. So, bakit niya ginawa yun? Okay, so let us find out. So, here. So, these are Mendel's P1 crosses. Again, for the flower color, meron tayong pure na purple at pure na white flower. Kinross niya yon, pinag-breed niya tong may purple, tsaka pinag-breed niya yung white na may na flower. Then, ang na-produce na yon ay purple lang. So, nagtataka si Gregor Mendel, nasan yung white? Hindi niya na mahanap yung white eh. So, ayan, yung flower position is axial and terminal na produce ay axial. Yellow seed and green seed ang na-produce ay yellow, and etc. So, he is wondering, saan na napunta tong mga traits na to? So, after this, diba? After this experiment, what he did is the step number 3. He self-pollinated the first filial generation plants. So, ito, kinross niya sa another na plant na nag-produce ng purple na flower from that cross. And he found out, dun yung nakita, na lumabas yung white na color. So, itong mga traits na to, kakonsider natin yan, i-consider yan ni Gregor Mendel na dominant trait. Dominant eh, kasi yun yung character ng parent na lumabas on the next generation. That's why it is dominant. Nag-cross-pollination ng dalawang pure breeding plants. And then, dun sa plants na yon, hindi niya nakita yung isang trait. So, we consider yung trait na yon as the recessive one. So, ano nangyari? So, after that, ang ginawa ni Gregor Mendel is pinag-self-pollinate niya yung mismong plants na na-produce niya. So, from the P2 crosses, Mendel made 2 important observations. When the F1 plants that expressed only the dominant trait were self-pollinated, some of their offspring in F2 expressed the recessive trait. So, nakita na ni Gregor Mendel yung white na nawawala dun sa flowers. Diba? Dun sa first filial generation, puro purple lang. Then, nung nag-self-pollinate siya ng mga purple na yon, nakita niya na yung white na flower. Nakita niya na yung recessive na traits of that plants. So, the ratio of the plants with dominant traits of the plants with the recessive traits is almost 3:1. So, 75% ang may dominant traits and 25% ang may recessive traits. So, yun yung kanyang observations. So, ito yung kanina, purple, again, homozygous purple and homozygous white. Nag-cross sila, nakapag-produce sila ng puro purple. So, ano yan? Heterozygous purple. Then, nung pinag-cross niya yon, yung isang purple to another purple, nakaproduce siya ng 3 purple at isang white. So, this white is recessive. Again, recessive siya kasi hindi siya lumabas dun sa first filial generation. That trait only appeared on the second filial generation. Okay. If titingnan natin, kasi syempre illustration lang yung pinakita ko kanina, let me show you the prediction of the offspring when we use a Punnett square. First of all, dun sa first parental generation natin, meron tayong pure breeding na purple and pure na white. So again, purple is dominant over white. So this is capital letter P and capital letter P. Bakit capital letter P pareho? Kasi it's pure. Pure is also synonymous to homozygous. So, pareho siyang capital letter. Then, pure white, are we going to use another letter? No. We are going to use the same letter for the same trait. So, this will be small letter P and another small letter P. Kasi this is pure recessive. Pure white. So, this is homozygous. So, these are the two parents of that organism. Then, next step is to cross. Cross natin yan. So, pure purple times pure white. So, for this, para makita natin or ma-predict natin yung offspring na mangyayari, gagawa tayo ng tinatawag na Punnett square. So, I know you are already familiar with the Punnett square. It is just a square, so I will just draw a square. Okay. So, in this, we are going to write the alleles of the parents. So, ito, punta siya dito, capital letter P, and the other capital letter P. So, ito naman, ito, pupunta siya dun sa kabila. So, this is small letter P, and the other is another small letter P. We have to make the recessive traits very small. And we have to make the dominant trait very large. Kasi para, lalo na sa mga letters na medyo halos pareho ng itsura. So, yan. So, we just have to cross it. Parang multiplication table lang. So, ito, multiply lang natin ito, tapos ito. We will get capital letter P and small letter P. Saan galing yung capital letter? Nanggaling siya dito. Yung small letter, nanggaling siya dito. So, ayan, nag-meet lang sila dun sa grid. Then, another one, ito, and ito. Ito, and ito. So, this is capital letter P and small letter P.
Okay, the same goes with this. We have capital letter P and small letter P. And another, we have capital letter P and small letter P. So this is what we get after crossing two purebred organisms. And now we have to count the result. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 4 capital P, small p. That is heterozygous purple flowers.
Heterozygous. Hetero, it will follow which is dominant. So, 4 na purple flowers yung ating na-produce. So, this is what we call as the genotype. Then, we also have the phenotype. So, when we say phenotype, that is just the physical appearance. So, genotype is either it's homozygous or heterozygous. Sa phenotype, kung ano lang yung itsura niya. So, physical appearance lang, hindi na natin isusulat kung heterozygous ba siya or homozygous. We just have to know ano yung kanyang trait. So, we have here purple. Purple flowers. So, ilan ang purple flowers natin dyan? Of course, 4. That is how we define or how we write the phenotype of the offspring. Next is the second experiment. So, this is P1. This is our F1. Okay. So, yan yung F1 natin. Meron tayong 4 heterozygous purple flowers. So, what Mendel did is, itong mga heterozygous purple flowers na to ay nag-self-pollinate. So, self-pollination natin. So, heterozygous purple and another heterozygous purple. So, this is capital P, small p. And another capital P, small p. So, cross natin yan. Capital P, small p, cross with capital P, small p. Again, we do the Punnett square. Square. Okay, so we write the alleles. Dito, wait lang. Ito, pupunta siya dito. Ito, pupunta siya dito. So, capital P, small p. Then, another. Ito, pupunta dito. Ito, pupunta siya dito. So, capital P, small p. So, cross na natin siya. So, what do you think are we going to get? So, meron tayo dito, ito capital, ito another capital. So, we get dalawang capital letters. This one, isang capital, then another small letter. Ito naman, sa third grade, capital letter tayo, then small letter. Then, sa fourth grade natin, dalawang small letter. From here and from here. That is what is being produced after the second cross of the same plant with heterozygous characteristics. So, let us identify the genotype. So, meron tayong capital P, meron tayong capital P, small p, and small p, small p. So, ilan to? We have 1. Ito naman, 2. Ito, 1 din. This is homozygous purple. This is heterozygous purple din. Kasi heterozygous siya eh. So, it's purple. It's dominant. Then, this one is homozygous white. So, if we're going to notice, lumabas na yung white na color. Nandun yung recessive trait. Dun sa second filial generation. Okay? Then, how about the phenotype? So, for the phenotype, again, it's the physical characteristics or physical appearance. We will disregard it kung homozygous ba siya or heterozygous. Kung ano yung traits niya, yun yung bibilangin natin. Again, meron tayong purple, meron tayong white. So, ilan yung purple natin? So, we cover this. Cover natin to. Wala na tayong pakialam kung homozygous siya or heterozygous. So, purple. Ilan yung purple natin? Ito purple din. So, 1 plus 2, we have 3 purple flowers. And white is 1. So, this is 3:1 or 75% purple is to 25% white. I hope you understood that example.